Okay, today in the third grade, we are going to be talking about how to solve problems using strip diagrams. So these are going to be word problems, and I'm going to read the first problem to you. It says, Rachel had some books. Jalen gave her 6 more books. Now she has 12 books. So, how many books did Rachel have to start? And I want you guys to remember that we have been talking about how important it is to focus on what type of structure the problem has right when you get started. So, the very first thing we're going to do is decide what type of structure this problem has. So, here's our diagram. Now, let's think about this. What are we starting with? It says, Rachel had some books. So we do not know what we're starting with. We can say that we're starting with a question mark because Rachel has some books, we don't know how many. Then it says Jalen gave her 6 more books. So we know that the change is the 6. So 6 books is going to be our change, okay? And then it says now she has 12 books. So our result is going to be 12. So is this going to be a join problem or a separate problem? Well, let's think about it. It says that Jalen gave her 6 books. So are these 6 books going to come to the start or are they going to leave? She's giving her 6 books. So Rachel's going to have more books. So we can conclude that we can draw our arrow this way, that the 6 books are coming to whatever Rachel has to start with, and that when we add both those books to the books that she already has, we're going to end up with 12. So we know that this is going to be a join problem. So now we're going to practice using our strips. So here's our piece of paper. Now it says, let's read our problem again. Rachel had some books. Jalen gave her 6 more books. Now she has 12 books. How many books did Rachel have to start? So let's start with the books that Rachel got from Jalen. So Jalen gave Rachel 6 books. So we're going to put a strip right here and we're going to label it 6 books. Because that's the amount of books that Jalen gave her. Now it says Rachel has some books. So we're adding these 6 books to some more books. We don't know how many books these are. So we're going to label this with a question mark. And we're going to label it books to start, because that's how many books she started with. But we do know one more thing. We know that this total amount of books is 12. Because the problem tells us that Rachel's books that she started with, combined with the books that Jalen gave her, equaled 12. So now we can write this out. We know that 6 plus this question mark, which I'm going to label it X, just so that we can use it in a problem, is going to equal 12. So 6 plus X equals 12. So how can we find out what this number is? Well, we know that all of this is 12. If we take away this 6 right here, then we'll be able to find however many is left. So let's rewrite our problem as 12 minus the 6 books that Jalen gave her so that we can figure out how many books that we started with. We know that 12 minus 6 is equal to 6. Equals 6. So we can conclude that Rachel had 6 books to start with. Now, if we're not sure, we can go back and we can check our problem and we can add these two together, just like we initially said. We're joining these two together. we have 6 books plus 6 more books equals 12 books. So we know that Rachel started with 6 books. Now that was a join problem. I want to look at one more problem that we have. And let's see if we can figure out what type of problem this is. Now this problem says Kennedy had 10 apples. She gave some apples to John. Now she has 2 apples left. How many apples did she give to John? So once again, I want us to look at our structure that we have. So we're starting with something, we're having a change, and then we end up with a result. So it says that Kennedy has 10 apples. So she's starting with 10 apples. She gave some apples to John. So the change we're not sure of in this problem. So we can go ahead and say that we are not sure what the change is. I'm going to write a question mark. But we know that in the result, in the end, she only had 2 apples left. So what type of problem is this? Is our arrow going to be pointing away from the 10? Are we taking some away from the 10? Or are we adding to the 10? The problem says that Kennedy gave some apples to John. So she took some of her 10 apples and she gave them away. So we know that our arrow is going to be pointing away. And then the result, whatever she has left, is going to be 2. So we can conclude that this is a separate problem. She's taking some away from what she started with. So let's go ahead and try to solve our problem using a strip diagram. The first thing I want to start with is we don't know how many she gave away. We know how many she started with, but we don't know how many she gave away. So I want to start with however many she had left. The problem says that Kennedy has 2 apples left. So I'm going to use this red strip to represent the 2 apples that Kennedy has left. So I'm going to label it 2 apples left so that we will know. Now we do know that Kennedy started with 10 apples. So I have this green strip and it's going to represent the number of apples that she gave away. We're not sure how many that is. So I'm going to label it apples given away. And I'm also going to label it with a question mark because we're not sure. But one more thing that we do know is that this total, with all of the apples together, there's 10 apples. Because that's the amount of apples that Kennedy started with, the problem told us. So how can we use these strips to figure out how many apples she gave away? We see here that when both the strips are added together, they're equal to 10. So we know that she started with 10 apples. She took away these apples and gave them to John. We don't know how many that is. I'm going to label it X so we can use it in our problem. And she was left with just 2 apples. How can we figure out what this number is? Well, we know that this is 10. If we take away this 2, then all we have left is the strip that represents the apples that she gave away. So let's rewrite our problem as 10 minus 2, and that's going to equal the apples we gave away. And we can use our strips to see that. We have 10, we're taking away 2. How many apples are going to be left? So let's work the problem. We know that 10 minus 2 is equal to 8. So we can say that she gave 8 apples away. This X is going to equal 8. And if we're not sure, we can go back and we can check it. And we can say Kennedy had 10 apples. She gave some away. We know she gave away 8, so we're going to subtract 8. And we know 10 minus 8 is 2. The problem tells us Kennedy had 2 apples left, so we know that the apples that she gave away is 8.